I was thinking of taking a break from Shaman King 2021 news interpretation once I finally get the rest of the September news update out to you all. Now that the new anime's premiere is approaching, the news updates are getting smaller and smaller, and much of said updates are just reaffirming the idea that the anime's production committee are doing everything they can to do justice to both the source material and the fans that grew up with the first anime adaptation. I also just don't have the time to make a new video to comment on every update, or at least I have trouble managing my time. I'm always getting distracted by homework, other projects, and just plain laziness. I get bored easily on projects that take a long time to finish, which leads to me procrastinating and dragging the project down with me. The novelty of whatever my project is focused on has usually long faded by the time the project is finally released. For the longest time, I felt I should just take a break from Shaman King, at least when it came to interpreting news for the 2021 anime. It's not like anything major I feel I should speak up about is going to happen this far down the line, right? Well, I'm wrong. Not only am I wrong, but frankly, I'm scared. Because the company that has been awarded streaming rights for the 2021 Shaman King anime in North America is Netflix. Now, those not in the know might not see the problem. Netflix is such a popular service, with probably the widest selection of material its users can binge at their home. You can share your password with a friend so they can watch too, and, so far at least, Netflix hasn't put too much of an effort at taking away that mooching privilege. It's basically the greatest streaming service in the world. But there are some issues I have with the service that have prevented me from subscribing. Some of these issues have me worried about Shaman King's 2021 adaptation and my ability to watch it. For one thing, Netflix shows almost never get a physical release. If Funimation got the streaming rights to Shaman King 2021, there's pretty much a guarantee that they would also negotiate for the merchandising rights, thus ensuring that Shaman King 2021 would eventually be released on Blu-ray and DVD. Crunchyroll sometimes does this as well, using various distribution partners, such as Funimation. But it is extremely rare for Netflix to release its own shows physically, and they rarely ever negotiate merchandising rights for a show that is brought to their service, or make use of a partner to do so. Netflix is a streaming platform, and they take that seriously. Streaming is where they get most of their money, and so chances are they see little reason to deal with physical releases of any show currently on their platform, if physical releases are either not going to rake in anywhere near the money they already make, or if the show becomes so popular that the physical release leads consumers away from subscribing to Netflix. You'd think that if a separate publisher swoops in to buy the merchandising rights, the issue of a physical release would be solved. But that's most likely not the case. As mentioned by Answerman, a separate disc publisher probably won't be okay with only owning the rights to publish discs for the series. Not in a world where most of the revenue comes from streaming. That publisher would want the streaming rights too. Netflix, unfortunately, is hogging the streaming rights. And unless something major happens, Netflix isn't going to be too interested in shelling out extra money to make use of merchandising rights. As it stands, so long as Shaman King is a Netflix exclusive, we can't expect a physical release of the show anytime soon. And that fact hurts so damn much. I'm very keen on owning what I buy, and having the various movies, books, and video games I want to enjoy released in a physical, ownable form. Shaman King is my favorite shonen manga series, and I want to be able to physically own a copy of everything that is related to it, including the 2021 anime adaptation. I want to have the entire anime on my shelf and be able to pop the series into my DVD or Blu-ray player and binge watch it without having to rely on an unreliable internet connection. But with a streaming service like Netflix, so long as the movie or series you want doesn't get a physical release, all you can expect is a glorified rental. A brick-and-mortar video rental outlet could at least be expected to sell you physical copies of whatever Blu-rays and DVDs it needs to get rid of to make room for newer items on their shelves. But with a streaming service, there is no physical product, and no room that needs to be made by physically selling off some of that product. Netflix does allow you to download episodes of whatever you're watching, but the download will only work on a device it is first downloaded on. The download cannot be made to work on another device without violating the Netflix terms and conditions, which could lead to Netflix deleting your account if they find out what you did. The download that is offered cannot be owned. It is simply a rental with DRM. But wait, can't you just screen capture the episode as a workaround? Yes, I can. But not only would that still violate the Netflix terms and conditions, that's where my second problem comes into play. I would need to either borrow someone else's Netflix account or get an account of my own. Not only do I not have one, I don't want one. I feel that by paying for a Netflix account, I would indirectly be supporting practices that I don't like or agree with. One practice I can't support is making various shows streaming only. The other practice I can't support is censorship. This problem isn't really related to the Shaman King 2021 anime, at least as far as I'm aware. Though Shaman King may be a Netflix exclusive, it doesn't seem like it's a Netflix original, and so Netflix doesn't have all that much direct control over how the series is made or presented. But other shows, when their content has drummed up enough controversy, are not so lucky. One of the biggest examples would have to be 13 Reasons Why, based on a young adult novel by J. Asher. The series delves into the events and reasons why the main character ultimately decides to commit suicide. While receiving praise for its performances and for drawing attention to the issues surrounding suicide, it was also criticized for allegedly oversimplifying and glorifying its subject matter, with much discourse aimed at the suicide scene that the show builds up to. The scene in question was filmed as violently as it was, specifically to combat the notion that those who commit such a suicide quietly drift off and convince those considering suicide to change their mind. But there were evidently concerns that the scene would exacerbate the problem instead. The medium of fiction is no doubt vulnerable to oversimplification in its attempts to provide both a comprehensible and entertaining story, and the risk of suicide contagion. The influence of one's decision to attempt suicide after observing another suicide is definitely something that should be kept in mind. But I just can't tell myself that supporting the censorship of any work of fiction is the answer to these problems, or any other real-world issue confronted by a work of fiction that winds up causing backlash with its depiction or acknowledgement. The way I see it, despite its obvious flaws, Ironically, fiction provides a much better outlet to speak truthfully than any other public forum. In the medium of direct face-to-face speech, you are put on the spot, and those who you speak with can freely interrupt you, either with words or force, if they don't like what you say. And there's a good chance they won't be polite enough to give you any time to reorganize your thoughts when you stumble. The stammering and misspeak that a speaker produces as a result of the other speaker intentionally or unintentionally tripping them up is inevitably deemed as the embattled speaker's true colors, polluting the very point they were trying to get across when their thoughts were still in order, along with their reputation in the eyes of those who witness the conversation, if the speaker words their thoughts in a way that is controversial. In the production of a non-live work of fiction, whether it be a book or a movie, the medium not only provides an opportunity to present one's message with fewer interruptions, but also the time needed to think about what one is saying, and keep one's thoughts organized as a result of not being put on the spot as much, at least during the writing stage. Once the manuscript or the film is complete, about the only way to interrupt the message is by closing the book or turning off the TV or computer, which is hard to do if the person observing said message is too immersed in the movie or book that is presenting the message. A person can obviously frame your message in a way that makes it unflattering, but they open themselves up to ridicule if they criticize your work without reading or watching it all the way through. And the CGI and deepfake technology that can be used to literally change the message that's already there requires complex technological knowledge that few are patient enough to acquire. Obviously, the medium of fiction can be used to spread lies and dangerous misinterpretation as well. But the freedom it provides to spread truth with less interruption is far more than the freedom offered in a face-to-face forum. And I feel that supporting the regulation of fiction's more problematic qualities will lead to an unhealthy slippery slope. While the slippery slope, a topic I'll spend more time on in later videos, is a logical fallacy, it is a fallacy I've seen in action way too much to be comfortable with. The DVD release for 13 Reasons Why is thankfully uncensored, but there is no guarantee that Netflix won't see to future DVD releases of the series retaining the censorship of the streaming version of the show. And there is no guarantee that they won't censor any more movies or shows on their platform if their content experiences too much backlash. I understand that the issues and topics that encourage censorship are sensitive matters, that certain plot points and scenes could be seen as insensitive or even immoral if misinterpreted, and that those who have experienced such things in real life could experience real psychological damage from the imagery that depicts such experiences. But the context of such imagery should always matter, and there should be other ways to fix these real-world problems without requiring the censorship of a work of fiction. Unfortunately, Netflix sometimes takes the censorship route. I can't in good conscience support that. I want to support the people who made this anime. I want to support Hiroyuki Takei. I want to help ensure that this anime gets more seasons, and that more of Takei's original story, and possibly his other manga works, get adapted. But in order for me to legally show my support to all this, I would have to watch the anime on Netflix. In order for me to be able to watch Shaman King 2021 on Netflix, I would ultimately have to give up on my own principles. It doesn't help that anime which Netflix acquires all too often spend long periods of time in the Netflix jail, while Funimation and Crunchyroll offer simuldubs, a release of the English dubs for an anime on the same day that the Japanese dub is broadcast. as well as the same day's subtitled release of the Japanese version. Netflix offers none of this. Instead, the show languishes in the Netflix jail for however long it takes for the current season of the anime to get through its broadcast run. You can't even get the subtitled Japanese version. Netflix users have to wait months after the original broadcast to get anything, let alone a dub. We're supposed to be past that. The hype train could be far out of the station by the time the show premieres on Netflix. What if not enough people watch it? Regardless of how good the anime turns out to be in terms of quality, or how closely it will follow the original source material, there's no guarantee that it will be well received. Even if it does turn out well, will there still be enough people around to watch it by the time it premieres in the States? For now, the only way that I could watch the new Shaman King anime on my terms would be to rely on piracy. With piracy, I could get a DRM-free download that I can own. If the fan subbers could avoid the eyes of the copyright police, I could get subtitled episodes far faster than I would if I was relying on the Netflix model. And yet, by going the piracy route, I would be refusing to support those who put together the anime and its source material. If there's not enough people watching the series through the official route, there's no guarantee that Shaman King's 2021 adaptation is going to get enough views to justify a physical release. Yet, the official route, at least in the US, quite frankly, sucks. The Netflix route and the piracy route require me and possibly a lot of other fans to make really painful choices in our attempts to view this new adaptation of a classic. And it shouldn't be that way.